We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, she, her, and hers, and I'm the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I'm very excited to welcome our next guest to the interview series, Oladosu Teyibo. He's the founder and CEO of Analog Teams. Oladosu, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to just kind of dig in and talk a little bit about the topic today. As mentioned, founder and CEO of Analog Teams. We are a software development and recruiting agency. We service venture-backed startups and larger Fortune 500 companies. And pretty much, I love that question. What do I want to be when I grow up? I would say a professional athlete. So I was really fast. I wanted to run track. So I ran track in university. That's actually where I met one of my co-founders. But I always thought that I was going to be a professional athlete until I got to the Division I level and I started seeing there were some really fast people in the world. And so, kind of had a realization and a coming to Jesus moment, if you will, and said, okay, well, what else am I really passionate about? And so I transferred that passion of track and being an athlete into business and building a software development agency.
I love that. I think I was at a conference one time when they were talking about how athletes and people who are involved in sports as well go on to be really great leaders because you're used to working with a team and there's a lot of transferable skills there as well. So I love that answer. I know we've been on a couple of webinars together, and I know for this conversation, we're going to talk about, company culture. I want to start out with a broad question, especially as a CEO and leader. What opportunity do you see really employers in today's market really have to create more equity in the world at large and in their community?
That's a good question. And yes, I am an AllVoices regular. So I love working alongside you and all the great questions that you ask, and the platform itself. But to get into that, I think that for employers, it's a lot about understanding the cost of equity and understanding that, especially in an economic turmoil, in a time like this, with everything that's going on, looking very deeply and very closely at how are we considering diversity, even as we do things like layoffs, even as we do things like cutting the budget. Are we still thinking about charity and CSR, et cetera? And I think that those companies that make the hard decision, which is to keep that as a priority in the forefront of what they want to accomplish, those are the companies that are going to be rewarded over the long term. But I think that employers at this moment actually have a right now to hold that badge of honor and that dare I say, virtue signaling that occurred during the last couple of years, holding that badge and actually holding it up in these times will prove to go actually a much longer way than all of the previous, just posting, et cetera. So I think there's a huge and wonderful opportunity currently.
I definitely agree that there is a huge opportunity to make a difference, reach people, and really honor an authentic commitment to the work as well, especially when you were talking about difficult times as well. It's not just during the times where it's really easy to do the right thing or really think about things from a critical lens. I think, with all of the changes happening in the workforce and people really reflecting on what they want to spend 40 plus hours a week working on, positive company culture is really sought out as well. Do you think in terms of, thinking about this dynamic thing of company culture, the way to improve it is to remove workplace issues in order to kind of enable people to do their best work?
Yeah, so I think it's very difficult for companies to remove workplace issues. I think for bigger companies, they have to try and do that as much as possible and create systems and practices that allow for that and equity across the board when it comes to dealing with issues. For smaller organizations, I think that it's a lot about empowering the people in your company to get through the issues, understanding and creating leaders that are able to get through tough and difficult times, confronting issues head on, be that external or internal issues that are occurring, and being very authentic across the board. For myself, I think about how are we ensuring that the whole person, so the individual, is, even though there's no promise of job security as there was before, and I think that that's a reality whether you're in the biggest organizations or the smallest, and still ensuring that the person still wants to wake up the next day and still deliver at a high level, because that delivery of a high level is the only thing that gets us through these tough times, right? The best companies actually survive, but it's hard to be the best when survival is on the forefront of everyone's mind. And so I think that for right now, the biggest issue is actually addressing that insecurity, right? And thinking of innovative ways. I've seen companies just have all hands and say, hey, look, just ask me anything, right? Have one of those, and some of the CEOs get beat up a little bit, right? But the authenticity goes a long way. I've seen, people just send out memos and different things that try to motivate the individuals. But I think whatever works for you, it's just about finding that tool, right? And I think right now, again, with everything that's going on, those companies that are able to do that over a long period of time will benefit, right? It'll show over the next couple of years.
Absolutely. People can tell when you are being authentic or not, when you're carving out that space, and really to address nothing is ever perfect, but how you are improving the workplace for everyone to really ensure that people feel like they belong, their ideas are valued. Another piece of what folks are looking for is to feel like, they have what they need in terms of resources and what success means to them too in a global environment. I know Analog Teams is a global organization too. What are the ways in which you really operationalize asynchronous work when you know that folks are in different time zones?
Yeah, and I would just would love to quickly add something to that
Yeah.
last point. I think also with that authenticity and giving your employees maybe not job security, but security in the mission and the vision of the company, you also get employees that are bought in. And so when when others are looking to join your organization or to stay or whatever the case may be, when they speak to the other employees, they're gung-ho about the opportunity. Like, I love this place, right? Even though we're going through a tough time, I really love what we're doing here. I love the people. Though that message goes a long way. So I think it's very important to think about what that brand equity and word of mouth does over a long period of time. But when it comes to operationalizing asynchronous work, so we work in an agile methodology. My COO, Maisha Aroga, she has a philosophy of Scrum as an operational focus and Agile as an operational focus versus particularly just a software focus. And so from the leadership team all the way down to the support teams, including software and recruiting teams, we all work in a Scrum facilitation. And so a lot of Scrum has gone to asynchronous. So a lot of our stand-ups and ceremonies, et cetera, are asynchronous. We use a lot of Slack, but we also want to make sure that although we like what I call de-meeting, so like just go through the week, I ask some of my leaders, like just go through and delete every calendar invite that's just not useful, or it's there, or the meeting's not, just say no and don't go. So we do that, but also I like to also emphasize there are times where you have to just pick up the call and go, right? You need to solve this problem. It's simply calling the individual or getting on a meeting 5 minutes, handling the situation and jumping off. So as much as we do go to asynchronous, we don't want to break the need for collaboration and the need for people to not feel like they're in a silo. So there is that constant balance of, did we go too far async because we're seeing this fall apart? And then there's the, hey, this meeting is no longer worth it. Can we do this over an email? And everyone from the bottom up has the right to speak on it and say it and even challenge myself.
I think that's important too. You don't want to set and forget anything. You want to check in. Are the systems working? Do people feel like there is a process for something? Do they feel like they can go to someone when they have a question as well? I think that is also really important to the success of the organization too, having that open line of communication and psychological safety to say, I feel comfortable speaking up too. As again, the kind of leader of the organization, one of the leaders, CEO and founder, what is your philosophy around working with people and HR teams, especially with that lens of company culture and when we're talking about talent acquisition and retention?
Yeah, so we're also recruiters, right? So we really care about this people in the HR team. It's actually in the forefront of our minds. So we're huge advocates of it. We think that, again, as the whole person is important, and that takes from the moment that the candidate is having their experience with the company, right? That's the first output, right? That candidate experience is what they remember. Like, oh, I just remember this recruiter was great, guided me through the process. They're the reason why I have this job. So that's a lot of what we focus when we're working with our clients about the candidate experience. And then we care a lot about what happens after. So where do they pick up? What's the onboarding process like? And internally, we like to do it first as ourselves. And then, if we're going to give it to our clients, it's something we've practiced. And so, as soon as you come into the company, there's a warm greeting, right? There's a onboarding, you're meeting different individuals. There's time to kind of understand what's going on. And so we really put an emphasis on talent and our HR team and our people team. It's actually probably like the fourth, we call it a quality of life, right? Not just like benefits, but what is your QOL over a long period of time? Are we checking in about how your life is doing? Are we creating parts where you can educate yourself and do better, career development? We're listening to our teams when they have issues and seeing how the company can address those issues. So our people in HR teams, we're advocates of it internally, but also advocates of it for our clients as well.
Yeah, looking at it from that holistic lens, it's in the nature of the work that you're doing too, in terms of really thinking about that whole process, the whole person, really checking in on their well-being too. I think, when we think about organizations as well, you want to make sure that you are keeping an ear to the ground on what's happening and, having that open line of communication in terms of, the people, employee experience and engagement strategy. What needs to really be local and what is kind of global from your perspective?
Oh, that's a great question. So some of the things that I've learned is that I'm like a very let's try this out type of person, iterative. I like to try things.
Like that?
So I might try, yeah, and I'll try something in like a particular country that we're in, and have a group gathering, and we'll make it really fun. And then what I've learned is that it really makes other teams think, hey, what about us? So there has to be a great plan of like what that follow-up will look like. I think getting people together is very important locally. And maybe you can do regionally, et cetera, but it's that sense of camaraderie. So even if we are async, even if we are remote, if there are people within, let's say, 3 hours or a couple hours or whatever you can afford to bring them together, doing that just creates this bond. And again, battling that feeling of feeling like you're in a silo as a remote worker. So that part is always very localized. We do local events in different countries, local gatherings. We take our managers and leaders in different regions and have them orchestrate. When it comes to equity in in treatment, when it comes to equity in pay, that global reach is a very difficult one because economies are changing and currencies are changing at such rapid rates over the last 3 or 4 years. And so being able to understand how a raise in America differs from a raise in a different continent or a different country is a very unique and delicate process. And so we have advocates from different regions talking about, has your well-being gone up or down according just to regular daily life? For instance, we're in about 7 different African countries and across 3 or 4 different regions, as well as in the UK and the US. And so during the pandemic, food prices across the different countries we were in went up about 30% across the board in the African continent. And so we had to be very cautious and very attentive to how we were dealing with the economic uncertainty in America. So we were being very cost conscious and so that we could survive, but also understanding that our people needed some more support from the company in order to get through it as well. And so keeping a very close eye on that was something that we did. I would say we did well enough, and I'm very proud of our team that led that operation. But I think that different companies are going to operate differently, but I think the equity when it comes to the treatment of people and the pay of people has to really be on the forefront of a global company.
Absolutely. And you also, to your point as well, don't want to make anyone feel like they are being left out, that their voices aren't heard. You want to make sure people feel like you see, hear, and understand them as well, have that conversation. And I know compensation and benefits and kind of the gatherings as well is something that people are talking about too. And I want to touch on when you talked about kind of the economic situation and understanding what's going on from a macro level too. You mentioned kind of the Ask Me Anythings with the CEOs, which I think is a really good idea to open up those lines of communication. What else is like really part of that people first mentality, especially when you are looking at some really hard times that we're seeing teams and businesses go through right now, especially during major tech company furloughs or layoffs? What is really important to remember during these times?
Yeah, I will. I'll go back to what I mentioned, and you might hear it as a theme of what I'm saying, but I really truly believe in it, and it comes with authenticity. So actually in Analog, and I'll just use us as an example of how we're doing it currently. So we have our 5 values. We call them our Tupac values. And so it's transparency, understanding, passion, accountability, and consistency. And those first 2 are the ones that lead to the rest of it. And so transparency and understanding are 2 things that we really hold very near and dear for us. So even during everything that's been going on, I had very clear conversations with my team. And I remember mentioning this on our webinar earlier, of just saying, hey, you all, this is what the case is. We are in a service industry. We're in the recruiting industry in particular. Layoffs are occurring across the entire technical industry. The first people hit are recruiters, because the truth of the matter is, if the company is not hiring, there's absolutely no need for a recruiter to be, as from the business perspective, right? There's an understanding of you will hire again, and so you should take your recruiting team through the process so that you're not rehiring and paying more later. But as from our perspective of being honest with our team, just letting them know that was the situation. And my explanation to them, and I'm a very honest person, is that, look, I had an all hands, I gathered my entire team, and I said, we have to make sure that you're an A player. Each of us, we as a company need to be an A player. And that means that each of us as an individual need to be an A player. And what we'll see is that when our clients are choosing who to keep on the projects or not, they're going to take the best of the best of the best. And so I had that very honest conversation with everyone. It was a very, kind of tough. But then what I told them is that we as Analog, we are committed to ensuring that we as a group get through this. And so we're going to go head first as an entire team. We're going to constantly keep you updated as what we see, the new contracts we're making. what we're doing on our time, building a stronger foundation and bigger client base in order to sustain more of our team members. And so again, for small organizations, I think it's great to lead with authenticity. I think for larger organizations, there's a level of transparency that you're able to go through with mass individuals. And I think that you just have to be very systematic on how you present the information, understanding that there are a lot more eyes on it and you can't control 1,000 questions, right? But for myself, with a 30 plus unit, I can field questions and take small groups and let them have the one-on-one touch to ask anything they have.
Absolutely. You want to be as transparent as possible, really consistent in the communication. And I think a lot of the kind of uncertainty comes from not knowing kind of information. And even if you don't have all the answers, just, communicating and letting people know updates as you can, like as the process keeps going along as well. I know at the beginning of our conversation, before we started recording, we were talking about we're whittling down the days in 2022 and heading into a new year. I want to ask, what is your advice for leaders, so both formal and informal, in 2023 to really be successful, especially since we've seen the role of leaders continue to change and evolve over time?
Yeah, so I'm going to speak to leaders that are that have ambitious goals, right? There is a level of reality of ambition that's important and driving your people. And there's a level of reality as well, and understanding the psyche of your team and understanding the psyche of your company. Normally in this December, I'm like gung-ho, I'm pushing everyone. I'm like trying to squeeze the last drop out of all the work we can accomplish in the year. But this year I've been very thoughtful in understanding that if I'm feeling burnt out just over, all of the things that have gone on this year, that my team may be feeling some sort of that. And so knowing that the way we're planning our next year deals with understanding how we as a team are going to motivate ourselves on an upward scale, right? And so we'll start the year with a fresh start, new ideas, and then, or more of the same ideas, excuse me, we have a focus next year of doing more of what we've done well. And so we will motivate our team to have an upward scale through the year, understanding where we are right now. These last few years have been very draining on people as a whole. Being just COVID and even the war and all the different things that are happening in the world, elections, et cetera. So being just very aware of how our team and your team are doing, I think that's my best advice. And then drawing your projections based on what you actually can acquire from your team as a whole.
That's a good thing for everyone to remember, especially folks who have really big, ambitious, hairy goals as well, and really, keep the stamina up and understand that everybody is going through a lot right now as well. And burnout is definitely a real thing too, in terms of job and also life in general. I know I asked really specific questions for you about company culture, your philosophy around leadership. This is kind of a vague question, but what is a current problem you're trying to solve?
That's a great question. That's a really great question. A current problem that I'm trying to solve is growth in uncertain times. That's what we are looking at, is how do you look at the economy? So right now, from what I've been hearing, is that we may even go into the recession next year, right? A potential recession. And even just that sentiment is, I know it will carry over to the entire economy, whether we do or not. And so there's a level of we're being conservative as an entire economy. And so understanding that and planning 16 months, 18 months of growth from here, and understanding what that means for the entire company. What does that mean for the entire the entire team, where we're headed and what we want to do? And so for me, as a leader, I'm looking at where we're headed over 18 months and making sure we have enough rations, making sure we have enough clientele and everything we need to go through what may be a cold winter, right? Making sure we've got all the blankets we need to for every single person who's on the team with us. And so we're really doing a lot there. For us, we have a software tool that we've been building for the last 2 years. And so next year, we're really going to be promoting it. We've had almost 30,000 people come to research bookmark, something that we've built for the UX researcher. And so we're really pushing that as something that we're going to drive a lot of our forces towards as well. And so for me, again, it's just looking at growth over the next 18 months and understanding how my entire team can get us through there and what the different skill sets of each individual, how can I maximize that over the next year?
Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes sense. Critical questions to ask right now. Oladosu, is there anything that I did not ask you that you would like to share, or would you like to underscore any key takeaways you hope people bring with them after hearing our conversation?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. I think that it's just important to remember that people are people. They're human beings. And although sometimes we have an assumption as leaders that people can't handle the truth, I think more of it has to deal with how you present the truth and how you present it to individuals in manners in which they can understand. And I think through hard times, understanding that the truth is all people want. They want to know, are they okay or are they not? Should they do this or should they not? They're hanging on the information that we give them. And I think that it's important to give as much truthful information as possible, and as much authentic and transparent information as possible to give our team members the opportunity to do what they will with the information you give them. And I've seen that work really well with a lot of companies and a lot of founders and leaders and operations people that I've spoken with, that just being very honest with their team, very, very truthful, has gone a long way. And so that's what I would impart on everyone, is that authenticity, transparency, understanding, those are the things that lead to success and lead companies through tough times.
I think that is really important to remember: honesty, communication. Oladosu, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon. It was good to see you.
Thank you. It was great to see you as well. Appreciate you and the platform you all are building.
Thank you. And as a reminder for folks who are listening, at AllVoices, we really believe in employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood. I know it's a requirement for the business to really succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.